Canto 1 told us about the world of the ideal, the dream twilight of the ideal, which is a very beautiful, inspiring, delightful place. But nothing can be seized or held or realized there. But now death is trying to convince Savitri that all the ideals, all the wonderful high ideals that inspire human beings, whether it's an ideal of beauty or love or truth or any kind of ideal, that all these are just imaginings, constructions. They have no permanent reality and they cannot be realized. And particularly he has been focusing in what we read last time on love. Who is this that you love? And if you want to reach a higher state, you will have to abandon all these attachments. But Savitri has given him a very, very beautiful answer at the bottom of page 613. So, and finally, she says, let us go further. Let's go beyond the phantom beauty of this world. For of its citizens, I am not one. I cherish God the fire, not God the dream. And now death is going to continue a long speech, which we will not finish today. We'll perhaps manage a couple of pages. So I'm reading on from the bottom of page 614. But death once more inflicted on her heart the majesty of his calm and dreadful voice. A bright hallucination are thy thoughts, a prisoner hailed by a spiritual cord of thy own sensuous will, the ardent slave. Thou sendest, eagle-poised to meet the sun, words winged with the red splendor of thy heart. But knowledge dwells not in the passionate heart. The heart's words fall back unheard from wisdom's throne. Vain is thy longing to build heaven on earth. Artificer of ideal and idea, mind, child of matter in the womb of life, to higher levels persuades his parents' steps. Inapt, they follow ill the daring guide. But mind, a glorious traveller in the sky, walks lamely on the earth with footsteps slow. Hardly he can mould the life's rebellious stuff. Hardly can he hold the galloping hooves of sense. His thoughts look straight into the very heavens. They draw their gold from a celestial mine. his acts work painfully a common ore. All thy high dreams were made by matter's mind, to solace its dull work in matter's jail, its only house where it alone seems true. A solid image of reality carved out of being to prop the works of time. Matter on the firm earth sits strong and sure. It is the firstborn of created things. It stands the last when mind and life are slain, and if it ended, all would cease to be. All else is only its outcome or its phase. Thy soul is a brief flower by the gardener mind, created in thy matter's terrain plot. It perishes with the plant on which it grows, for from earth's sap it draws its heavenly hue. Thy thoughts are gleams that pass on matter's verge, thy life a lapsing wave on matter's sea. A careful steward of truth's limited means, treasuring her founded facts from the squandering power, it tethers mind to the tent posts of sense, to a leaden grey routine clamps life's caprice, and ties all creatures with the cords of law. A vessel of transmuting alchemies, a glue that sticks together mind and life. If matter fails, all crumbling cracks and falls. All upon matter stands as on a rock. I think that's where we stopped last week, no?
That's what I thought.
Anyway, we've revised, we've read it again. So then he goes on to say, yet this security and guarantor, this matter, pressed for credentials, an impostor proves, a cheat of substance where no substance is, an appearance and a symbol and a naught. Its forms have no original right to birth. Its aspect of a fixed stability is the cover of a captive motion swirl, an order of the steps of energy's dance, whose footmarks leave forever the same signs. A concrete face of unsubstantial time, a trickle dotting the emptiness of space. A stable seeming movement without change, yet change arrives, and the last change is death. Perhaps even we read to there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where we read to. So now we'll start the next bit. You start, Dhanalakshmi.
What seemed most real once is Nihil's show. its figures are snares that trap and imprison the sense. The beginningless void was its artificer. Nothing is there but aspects linked by chance and seeming shapes of seeming energy.
Yes. So what seemed most real once, what seems to us real, matter, is just a show, a pretense by nihil, nothingness. Nothingness. And these figures of matter are snares, traps. We use a snare to catch a bird or a small animal. So the figures of matter are kind of traps that get hold of and imprison our senses. They give certain impressions to the sense holds on to that, and all our conception of the world is built from that. And yet it's only nihil's show. All this has been made by its artificer, the person who has created this artificial construction, the beginningless void, the emptiness that has no beginning and no end. All this is just an illusion. Nothing is there but aspects limned by chance, outlined, drawn by chance, and seeming shapes, apparent shapes. But they are not really shapes. They are illusory shapes taken by energy, by force. Is it clear? Anybody wants to ask anything?
Again, he says seeming energy.
Yes, of seeming shapes, of seeming energy. Also, the energy doesn't really exist. Suresh, you'll read the next two lines. Yeah?
All by death's
Mercy.
Breath.
Breathe.
And live awhile. All think and act by the inconscient space.
Yes. He says, I'm just allowing all this to apparently live, to breathe and live for a short time. That's my mercy, my kindness. Everything that lives thinks and acts by the grace or the mercy again of the inconscient. These are all illusory shapes and movements. That's what he says. That's his gospel.
Addict of the roseate luxury of thy thoughts, turn not thy gaze within thyself to look, but fix yours in the gleaming crystal mind. Close not thy lids to dream the forms of gods.
So he calls Savitri an addict. He says, you're addicted to these wonderful, this luxury of thy thoughts, roseate, pink, glowing pink, rosy pink. It says we speak about putting on rose-tinted spectacles. No? Your thoughts are like that. They are tinged rosy pink. That's what you're addicted to. You're looking all the time into the product of your mind. Don't turn your gaze inside yourself to look at these visions which mind presents you with. And he says, the gleaming crystal mind. There are fortune tellers, people who look into the future, and sometimes they use a crystal ball, small crystal ball. So he says that's what you're doing. You're looking into your crystal ball and seeing all these illusory shapes there. Don't do that. Don't close your eyes to dream about the forms of gods. Patricia.
At last, to open thy eyes, consent, and see the stuff of which thou and the world are made. Inconscient in the dumb, inconscient void, inexplicably a moving world sprang forth. A while secure, happily insensible, it could not rest content with its own truth. For something on its nescient breast was born, condemned to see and know, to feel and love. It watched its acts, imagined a soul within. It groped for truth and dreamed of self and God.
Yes. So he says, at last open your eyes and see things as they really are. Find out what this is, this stuff, this substance of which you and the world are made. And what he wants to say is that this substance, which seems real to you, is actually all an illusion. This moving world, this universe of movement, sprang forth inexplicably, in some mysterious way. It was inconscient, without consciousness, in this dumb, silent, inconscient world. It was not aware and could not avoid emptiness, the dumb, inconscient void, inexplicably, this moving world sprang forth. Yeah. This is what the physicists also tell us, that there was nothing, and then there was a big bang, and all the energy and all the matter that makes up our universe suddenly was there, inexplicably. So, for a time, a while, safe, happily insensible, without any feeling. It was like that for a time, but it couldn't remain content with its own truth, the truth of its first existence. Because something on the nescient breast, the unknowing, nescient means not knowing, on the breast of this moving world, something was born there which was condemned. Condemned, this is a punishment, no? It can't help it, it's being forced to see and know, to feel and love. That something is able to observe its own acts, and it's able to imagine that it has a soul. That something is groping for truth, groping in the darkness, feeling around in the darkness, and dreamed of self and God. Perhaps this is a way of looking at the world that a part of us accepts. No? Inexplicably the world is there, and here we are also and we can't help being the way that we are. And maybe we comfort ourselves with these dreams that we have a soul, that there's a self, that we are part of, there's God. At least this is how this negative figure of death would like us to see things. Who's at the back there? I can't see at all. Who's behind you, Patricia? Oh, Gopal. Yes, please.
When all unconscious was, when all was well, I, dead, was seeing and kept my desire still. Desiring my ending, unwearing plan, creating with a calm, insentient heart. In my soaring power of unreality, recognizing nothingness to take a time, infallible, my blind, unthinking faith, making thy charms a substitute like faith, by being the formula of necessity, founded on the hollow ground of thy name, the pure desiring of nature's stream.
Yes, thank you. When everything was unconscious, then it was fine, he says. That was fine. I was the king, and I ruled everything. But then he claims really that he has created all this with an unerring plan. He says he didn't really will it, but somehow he did it. A plan with no mistakes in it, a perfect plan. I, death, he says, was creating with a calm, insentient heart, a heart with no feelings, calm, detached. I used my sovereign power of unreality. Perhaps we could say Maya. The word Maya is sometimes used in this way. I used my sovereign power of unreality to oblige all this nothingness, this emptiness, to take a form. And it was my force, my blind, unthinking force, infallibly, without making any mistakes, making by chance a fixity like face, something that's fixed, inevitable, like fate, you can't avoid it. But he says it was all a whim, really. There was no purpose or intention behind it. But I created all these formulas of necessity, the way things have to be. And I founded, I based on the inane, on the meaninglessness, which gives a ground, some kind of base, but it's a hollow ground. There's no really any firm base, it's empty. I founded on that hollow basis the sure bizarrerie of nature's scheme. So nature has done all this scheme. He says the sure bizarrerie. I think he's invented this word. Is it in French? Yes? Yeah, okay. So, this strangeness, this weirdness. Bizarre, yes. Bizarre means weird or strange. Here it's a noun. The strangeness, the inexplicableness of nature's scheme. He's taking the credit for everything. Here he's not very convincing, I find. Praveen, would you read?
I curved the vacant ether into space, a huge expanding and contracting breath, harbored the fire of the universe. I struck out the supreme original spark and spread its sparse rank army to the inane, manufactured the stars from the occult radiance, marshaled the platoons of the invisible dance. I formed earth's beauty out of atom and gas, and built from chemic plasm the living man.
So ether is the rarest form of substance, finest, most imperceptible. So he says, I curved that emptiness into what you people think of as space. And that began to breathe, breathing in and out, a huge expanding and contracting breath. So when this in and out breathing movement happens, then there's some kind of friction. Contained within that breath, there's the possibility of friction and fire, heat being generated. I, death, am the one who struck out the supreme original spark, the very first spark of fire. And I've spread its sparse, ranked armies through the inane. He's referring to all the stars, through the inane, through the meaninglessness. I have manufactured the stars from the hidden radiances, from the hidden lights. And I've organized all this. I have marshaled the platoons of the invisible dance. You don't see that invisible dance of atoms going on. I've organized all that. They are my armies. A platoon is a unit in an army. And they are marshaled, they are arranged in their ranks. I have formed all this beauty of earth out of atoms and gas, and out of the chemic plasm, the original basic form of matter. I brought about not just living beings, but the living man. I have created all this, he says. Hemlata.
Then thought came in and spied the harmonious world. Matter began to hope and think and feel. Tissue and nerve bore joy and agony. The inconscient cosmos strove to learn its task. An ignorant person God was born in mind, and to understand invented reason's law. The impersonal vast brought death to man's desires. A troubled rock, the great world's blind still heart. and nature lost her wide immortal charm.
Yes. So where has this thought come from? Out of nowhere. A thought came in and has spoiled all that harmonious material world. It's brought into matter hope and the power of thinking and feeling. It's brought even into the tissues, into the substance of our bodies, tissue and nerve. It's not only that they feel sensations, they feel emotions, joy and agony. So all this inconscient universe, this inconscient cosmos, began to try to understand its task. What is it here for? What is it supposed to do? In mind, a kind of God is born. But he says it's an ignorant personal God. Mind is ignorant, no doubt. And in order to understand, this mind has invented the law of reason, process of logic. And there's a kind of response from that impersonal vastness which is the universe. There seems to be a kind of response. Something throbs back, responding to the desire of man. And that has brought about a great disturbance in the universe. A trouble rocked the great world's blind, still heart. And nature lost her wide, immortal calm. Tom, you will continue?
Thus came this vast, incomprehensible scene. Of souls enmeshed in life's delight and pain, and matter's sleep and mind's mortality, of beings in nature's prison, waiting there, and consciousness left in seeking ignorance, and evolution's slow, arrested plan. This is the world in which thou movest, astray in the tangled pathways of the human mind, in the issueless circling of thy human life, searching for thy soul and thinking God is here.
So what he has described in this, on that page 617, he says this is the way in which all this has come about. This incomprehensible, ununderstandable scene that you human beings are experiencing. It is warped. It is somehow twisted out, misformed. It's an incomprehensible scene of souls caught, enmeshed. A net is made of meshes, and a fish will get caught in the mesh of a net. So he says the souls are caught, they're stuck in this net of life's delight and pain and matter's sleep, the inertia of matter, and the mortality of mind that persists in an individual being but then gets dissolved when he dies. This scene of beings imprisoned in nature, waiting for death. And consciousness, which isn't allowed to be fully conscious, it is left in seeking ignorance. And this scene of the slow, arrested plan, it's been held back, it's not allowed to move forward, this plan of evolution. We might look at the life, human life, like this, as something mysterious and inexplicable. And this is the description of the world in which you are moving. You're astray, you're lost. Because he says thou.
Yeah.
He's using this second person singular form. So the verb would be thou movest. And for his rhythm, he wants us to say it as one syllable. So he puts this apostrophe so that we don't pronounce it movest, we pronounce it movest. Yeah? Mm-hmm. That's for the rhythm. You're all astray in the tangled pathways of the human mind. If you're in a forest and you can't see where you're going, and there are many small pathways, it happened to me not so long ago in the green belt. I was completely lost. I went round and round in circles before I recognized Nico's gate and knew where I was. So we're like that, moving round and round in the tangled pathways of the human mind, in the issueless circling of thy human life. There's no way out. You have to go round in circles. And you are searching for your soul, and you're thinking that God is here. Only I am here. Death. Yeah? Gael, you like to read?
So where is room for soul or place for God in the brute immensity of a machine? A transient breath thou takest for thy soul, born from a gas, a plasm, a sperm, a gene, a magnified image of man's mind for God, a shadow of thyself grown upon space.
Thank you. So he says, that's all what you've been imagining. But how can there be soul? And how can there be a room for God when all this is just a machine? It's an immense machine, it's very big, but there's also something crude about it, brute immensity of a machine. It has no softer feelings. You have this transient breath, this life prana, and you imagine that's a soul that's keeping you alive. But in fact, you've been born from a gas, from this plasm, this primitive state of matter, from a sperm, a gene. The soul is a magnified image. No, you are imagining. No, you're taking a magnified image of man's mind for God. That's what you are doing. And that magnified image is just a shadow of yourself that's been projected onto empty space. All these things, soul and mind, even yourself, all this is illusory. Kumsun, I didn't get a chance to read it. Please.
Interposed between the author and Nethervoid, while consciousness reflects the world around. In the distorting mirror of ignorance, or a world turns to catch, imagine the stars. Or if a half-truth is flying with the earth, throwing its light on a dark shadowy ground, it touches only and leaves a luminous smudge.
Yes, thank you. So you have got some consciousness, this he seems to admit, and your consciousness has been interposed between the upper emptiness and the lower emptiness. Here's this consciousness of yours. It reflects the world around you in a distorted way. Sometimes in fairgrounds or amusement halls, we can go in and they have distorting mirrors, and it's very amusing to see what you look like distorted. So he says that's what your consciousness is. It's a distorting mirror. The ignorance of the state of your consciousness is a distorting mirror. It reflects the world around, or it turns upwards to try and catch those stars, but you're only imagining them. But then, again, it's so unconvincing. He gives a description like this that he claims is the way things are, but then he also gives an alternative. He says, or if some half-truth is playing with the earth, throwing its light on this dark, shadowy ground of matter, it just touches it, and what it leaves is a luminous smudge. A smudge is if you get a little bit of soot or dirt on your clothes and you happen to try to brush it away, it just flattens out. No? So that's a dark smudge. This is a luminous smudge. There's some kind of bright appearance of light there. That's all. Joel.
Immortality thou claimest for thy spirit, but immortality for imperfect man, a God who hurts himself at every step, would be a cycle of eternal pain. Wisdom and love thou claimest as thy right, but knowledge in this world is error's mate, a brilliant procuress of nations, and human love a posturer on earth's stage, who imitates with verve a fairy dance.
So he's mocking all these different ideas and ideals. Immortality, for example. You, Savitri, you're claiming that you are an immortal spirit. And you want immortality for human beings. But immortality for imperfect human beings would be a cycle of eternal pain, because they are so imperfect, no? A God who hurts himself at every step. We are all the time doing things that cause suffering for ourselves and other people. How awful it would be to never have any release from all that. Immortality for imperfect man, a God who hurts himself at every step, would be a cycle of eternal pain. Forget it. You claim wisdom and love as if they were your right, no? But in this world, knowledge is the partner, the mate of error. And error is, or knowledge, is a brilliant procuress of nescience. A procuress. It is somebody who procures partners for people, temporary partners. So what knowledge is procuring for you, what she's supplying you, is nescience, things that not knowledge, the opposite of knowledge. And human love is just posturing on the stage. An actor imitates with verve, very vigorously, a fairy dance, something that should be very delicate and fine and refined. No, nothing like that. I think we had better stop there for today. He goes on about knowledge and about love. Yes, we'll finish this canto next week. What seemed most real once is nihil's show. Its figures are snares that trap and prison the sense. The beginningless void was its artificer. Nothing is there but aspects limned by chance, and seeming shapes of seeming energy. All by death's mercy breathe and live a while. All think and act by the inconscient's grace. Addict of the roseate luxury of thy thoughts, turn not thy gaze within thyself to look at visions in the gleaming crystal mind. Close not thy lids to dream the forms of gods. At last to open thy eyes consent, and see the stuff of which thou and the world are made. Inconscient in the dumb, inconscient void, inexplicably a moving world sprang forth. A wild, secure, happily insensible, it could not rest content with its own truth. For something on its nescient breast was born, condemned to see and know, to feel and love. It watched its acts, imagined a soul within. It groped for truth and dreamed of self and God. When all unconscious was, then all was well. I, death, was king, and kept my regal state, designing my unwilled, unerring plan, creating with a calm, insentient heart. In my sovereign power of unreality, obliging nothingness to take a form, infallibly my blind unthinking force, making by chance a fixity like fates, by whim the formulas of necessity, founded on the hollow ground of the inane, the sure bizarrerie of nature's scheme. I curved the vacant ether into space, a huge expanding and contracting breath harbored the fires of the universe. I struck out the supreme original spark and spread its sparse-ranked armies through the inane, manufactured the stars from the occult radiances, marshalled the platoons of the invisible dance. I formed earth's beauty out of atom and gas, and built from chemic plasm the living man. Then thought came in and spoiled the harmonious world. Matter began to hope and think and feel. Tissue and nerve bore joy and agony. The inconscient cosmos strove to learn its task. An ignorant, personal God was born in mind, and to understand invented reason's law. The impersonal vast throbbed back to man's desire. A trouble rocked the great world's blind, still heart, and nature lost her wide, immortal calm. Thus came this warped, incomprehensible scene of souls enmeshed in life's delight and pain, and matter's sleep and mind's mortality, of beings in nature's prison waiting death, and consciousness left in seeking ignorance, and evolution's slow arrested plan. This is the world in which thou movest, astray in the tangled pathways of the human mind, in the issueless circling of thy human life, searching for thy soul and thinking God is here. But where is room for soul, or place for God, in the brute immensity of a machine? A transient breath thou takest for thy soul, born from a gas, a plasm, a sperm, a gene, a magnified image of man's mind for God, a shadow of thyself thrown upon space. Interposed between the upper and nether void, thy consciousness reflects the world around in the distorting mirror of ignorance, or upwards turns to catch imagined stars. Or if a half-truth is playing with the earth, throwing its light on a dark, shadowy ground, it touches only and leaves a luminous smudge. Immortality thou claimest for thy spirit, but immortality for imperfect man, a God who hurts himself at every step, would be a cycle of eternal pain. Wisdom and love thou claimest as thy right, but knowledge in this world is error's mate, a brilliant procuress of nescience, and human love a posturer on earth's stage who imitates with verve a fairy dance.